Well, I know we've asked everybody else about this, but when you're watching a game like that, and you know that Josh is the kind of quarterback that's going to be able to extend plays and everything, and you focus on it, and he's still able to do that. I mean, is there a level of frustration, or you just like you move on to the next play and try and figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to critically look at it afterwards and say, how can we, set up a plan better, or execute when we have opportunities to execute. Going into the game, you can't ever get frustrated when he does make his plays because I don't know if there's ever been a game where he doesn't do that. And so we knew that we had to be able to move on and continue to rush him the right way, and he did a really good job on some of those, extending and making plays downfield. So, going into the game, that really good players are going to make really good plays. But then you got to look at it critically the next day and say, how can we minimize those from happening?
When you guys were able to keep him in the pocket, were you happy with the coverage all over the field?
There's always going to be things that we can clean up. Overall, it was good on the back end. We were connected body on body, and like when it was, kept him in the pocket and there wasn't a spot to throw. It was good result. We just got to capitalize on situations, getting them behind the sticks and getting off the field.
How do you feel you guys defended kind of like the edge and all the space kind of took the sideline?
In the run game or the pass game?
I guess all of it.
In the run game, the edges weren't necessarily an issue per se with what they were doing. In the pass game, obviously if he breaks contain outside the edge, if it was designed for that to flush him out that way, obviously that's okay. But if you didn't want that to happen, obviously we got to clean that up.
You guys have a lot of new faces up front on the defensive line. How overall did you feel like that went in the first game?
There's good and bad. There's things that we got to clean up from alignment assignment, but also just technique and winning at the point of attack at times a little bit more. But at every level, not just D-line, good and bad, and correct it and get better for the next week.
What do you think of Mac's game?
Mac had a good game. Wasn't surprised the physicality and violence that he played with. That's kind of who he is. So I was pleased with that. He flew around. He had a solid game. Assignment sound and was hitting the ball.
During previous year, actually, I guess it was training camp, Saban talked about how year 2 as an edge rusher, he feels like he learned a lot about himself. Did you see that kind of manifest itself in this game?
Yeah, he had a couple good rushes. Obviously, the one was a penalty. You just got to keep your hands down and not hit the quarterback up high. But that's not necessarily a game where you're pinning your ears back because of the quarterback and his ability to run. So there's not necessarily a lot of opportunity for that. But when he had those opportunities, I thought he did a good job.
What do you feel like the biggest difference is between him now and him 12 months ago?
Just playing faster with everything in the run game or his pass rush. Whether that's because of us thinking about his assignment and just knowing it that much more, or just the technique is more comfortable with it. He's playing really fast right now.
What do you think Max and Starling do?
They both throughout camp earned a right to go out there and make plays. I feel really good with both those guys out there.
What do you like out of Max's game?
He covered. When it was, one-on-one outside, he was body on body, and he was in good shape. So things to clean up within that, but, that's the job of the corners to deny the football. A couple tackling things got to clean up a little bit too.
How much different is the approach when you go from Josh Allen, a quarterback that has that two-dimensional skill set, versus a Matthew Stafford that you kind of know is going to be in the pocket a little bit more?
Both really good quarterbacks, though, right? I got a lot of respect for both these guys. I feel like I've gone against Stafford a lot because I was in the division with him in the NFC North. You kind of have that built into your defense in a sense of when we play mobile quarterbacks, we know we have a menu that we are going to have to probably narrow down, but get to some of these principles. And then versus a quarterback that maybe sits in the pocket a little bit more, but can sling it all over the yard. I mean, Josh can sling it all over the yard too, but Stafford can put the ball anywhere. And so how are you going to combat that? And, even though he sits in the pocket, his pocket movement is good. His mobility is still good. He can move around when it's time to move around, and maybe one of the tougher players I've ever gone against. It doesn't faze him. If you hit him, he's going to keep sitting in there and slinging the ball. So you kind of have that built into the defense of what type of stuff do you want to get to affect the quarterback, both rush and coverage.
Rams are really banged up on the offensive line. How's the approach with the defense to say, hey, it doesn't matter who they have out there, you just got to do, quote, do your job and not consider that there's backups in there?
Yeah, I think I got a lot of respect for the Rams, Sean McVay, that whole operation, and I know that they're going to get guys ready to play that game. So whoever's out there, they're going to be competitive. They're going to know what to do. You saw it. They obviously got banged up in that game, and guys stepped in and they battled a really good team all the way down to the end. So they're going to have guys ready to play, and we're going to get their A game no matter what. And so regardless of who we're going against, we got to focus on doing our job and performing at a high level still.
What have you seen from their receivers other than Cooper Kupp now that they're without Puka?
Yeah, it's kind of everybody's going to. I shouldn't say this because this was Buffalo's thing. Everybody eats, right? That's what they're saying. But everyone does their job at a high level, and I feel like Stafford trusts those guys. When it's their time to get the ball, he's going to deliver it to them. And you see guys making plays. Tyler Johnson went in there kind of for Puka and did a really good job. Made a huge play, catching an under route and extending it for a big gain. Minnesota guy, by the way, college teammate of mine. They're guys that are, they have guys who are explosive like Tutu. They got guys that are going to go in there and run really good routes and catch the ball. And so they have depth at that position. Obviously, Puka's a really good player, so it always hurts to lose a good player for them. But kind of like what I was saying with the O-line, they're going to get guys ready to play, and we're going to get their A game.
How much of the big focus is on the running game? Because Kyron, he had two pretty good games against you last year.
He did. He's a really good player. I have a lot of respect for what they do in the run game, the nuances of the different ways that they run duo versus mid zone versus wide zone. It's detailed out with how they can manipulate the blocking, the points, how they can use those receivers to bluff the outside backers or go right through them and run wide zone. And so, the receivers, and then against us, they honestly had a unique plan going into that first game and into the second game with using the receivers to really get in there and block outside backers, dig out safeties, all of that. So they do a great job of 11 in the run game, and then on top of that, they have a really good back. And so you can't let that back get leaky yardage. We got to be efficient tacklers, but also we have to have a really good plan for that run game because it's very detailed and it's a good plan. It's a good rush plan.
Does that create some adjustments or having to do some things differently in the game itself that maybe you wouldn't normally do?
That depends on how the game is going. Obviously, you set up a plan going into the week with what you think that you're going to get, and then you have to be able to adjust and change as you see things if it's not what you thought or if they have a tweak in what they're doing, which they're definitely an operation that can come in with some nuances that you maybe weren't ready for that they've put in that week and that they're executing at a high level. So you got to be ready to combat those type of things.
What's that like for you coaching as a college teammate?
Nothing really, but I'll definitely say what's up to him after the game, and yeah, he's a good player. He's a really good teammate too.
Does it help because you do kind of know him a little bit better than?
No, I'm gonna study the tape and on everybody. Yeah.
There was a stat from Sunday night that Cooper Kupp was in motion at like a crazy rate and percentage. What's the challenge then when you get a guy of that caliber and he's always in motion?
Yeah, it's not just Kupp. They motion a lot, period, and they know what they're doing with that in the pass and run game to move people, and whether it's in the run game and they're moving people for a reason so that it can manipulate the double teams, or in the pass game to try to get certain people in matchups or get people with space to work with. So you just got to be really good with your own defense and how do you adjust those different motions out in the run and pass game.
Overall, how do you evaluate how the run defense did in this game against Buffalo, just with the running backs?
Yeah, you got to look at the quarterback rushes on passes a little bit different, but in the run game, you got to look at a lot of things. It's not always a tale of rush yards or rush per carry because, you might have a good amount of negatives or gains for nothing, but there's runs that are hitting, maybe they're explosive runs, or maybe they're runs that are hitting at, 8-9 yards, which you don't want, right? Because you're getting behind the sticks. So you got to kind of look at it layered and say, how can we be better to limit explosive runs? How can we be better to eliminate the medium runs that put us in, third and shorters, second and shorters? And then what do we do really well to create negatives? So you got to kind of take it all in, look at it schematically. What can we do better up front to put our guys in positions to be able to play the blocks the right way or get the linebackers hitting the ball? But then also, how can we be better with our technique and win at the point of attack and anchor double teams or win one-on-one blocks? So it's layered with how you have to look at it. And there's things that we have to get better on from this past week.
How did you assess Xavier Thomas in his debut?
There's things to clean up. There's some things he did really well. Is that simple. You got to look at it from a critical eye and say, here's how we can improve going forward. Again, like in terms of rush, the same thing with Xavier. It wasn't necessarily a game where you can always pin your ears back just because the quarterback was such a threat as a runner.